Hello and welcome to an EFAcast, where we talk about the festivals in Europe that are coming up and go into some detail about what you can hear in the coming few days and weeks. I'm starting by talking to Joost Fonteyne from the Klarafestival in Brussels, which opens on the 13th of March and carries on until the 22nd of March this year, 2021. Joost, hello. Good to talk.
Hello, Simon. Nice to see you.
In these strange times of Zoom and pandemics, etc., you are having a Zoom festival and a streaming festival for those 2 weeks, a week and a half of activity. And they include some extraordinary pieces which perhaps wouldn't have been possible in ordinary times, but here are given a particular excitement and relevance. One of the things you're starting with, and which wouldn't otherwise have been available to the rest of the world, is your Baroque and contemporary view of Baroque Handel and Vim Hendrix, the ancient music doyen from all around Europe, George Frederick Handel, and Vim Hendrix, a contemporary Belgian composer. Would you like to start by telling me a little about that?
Well, basically it's an idea that came across by Music Theatre Transparent and B-Rock, where they saw that there is a link between reflections on nature, who already happens in the period where Handel was living, and the accent that we have on reflections on nature today. So in that period, he was very good friends with Brocke, the poet, and he wrote a number of pieces that reflected on these on the beauty of nature. And so he decided to make his Neun Deutsche Arien around this thematic. And when they were looking after a contemporary pendant for that, they asked Vim Hendrix if he could write something new that would accompany these pieces, these beautiful 9 pieces. So Wim looked into the poetry of Brocke, and then he saw some words that were key for him that he used for his new compositions. And in fact, he created a sort of his own 4 seasons that go in between the 9 Deutsche Arien that Handel wrote. And in this way, contemporary meets the older music, and is going to be directed also in a music theater piece, and will be sung by Ilse Ehrens. Unhappily, we couldn't have Sun Hye Im, who was due to do the performance due to COVID travel issues, but we're so happy that Ilse could join us for this project.
Now, it's interesting because we're so used to hearing Handel's work in Italian and in English, and to hear him actually setting some of his own German language is really quite unusual, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and I think it is a piece of Handel that is not so much presented. So that's also interesting, because there's a lot of music by Handel around in the concert halls. But these 9 Deutsche Arien is not so frequently presented. So this is an opportunity also, and of course this mingling with the work of Vim Hendrix and the scenography that goes along with it is really a Belgian premiere and even a world premiere that can be enjoyed through the festival.
And what's so fascinating about the Handel is that, here is what is effectively one of the earliest song cycles, prefiguring Schubert by 100 years. And to hear him doing 9 German arias as opposed to setting an extracts from Ronaldo or whatever is a big change. Tell me something a little bit about Vim Hendrix's music. What's it like?
Well, Wim is someone who is going already in Belgium quite some time now, and he becomes to have an international career also. He was also seen in the last Venice Biennale in the music part of the Venice Biennale. And he's someone who, first of all, he's a percussionist, and that's his background. He studied percussion and he played percussion. So that is important for him also. Second thing is that he very much invested in the non-Western traditions, in this kind that he was studying these musics quite thoroughly. And you can hear that in a number of his performances and his compositions. We will have also a project that is within a day called Sound and Vision, which is called Parvati, which was already giving an idea that this link with this non-Western music is important. But here he went a bit more into a more classical Baroque idiom, not really working with these non-Western references, but really he went into a rather Baroque kind of way of composing his music.
One of the things that seems to be linking your festival together this time is the old and new theme. And we've got another concert which is happening, which is the Malers das Lied van der Erde, set in a chamber orchestral arrangement by the Dutch composer who so sadly died a year ago, Reinbert de Leeuw. Tell me something about that and how you came to pick that piece.
Well, first of all, it's one of the big repertoire pieces in the classical history. I mean, this is big time classics. This is really the end of a piece that was written by Mahler in disturbance also, when his daughter died, etc. The end of his life coming on. So this was a piece where a lot of emotion and where a lot of life experiences gathered together. What we were very interested in is how someone who was also in a similar position, Reinbert was also has written this piece, or the arrangement. I can't say this piece, but the arrangement of this composition towards the end of his life. I'm sure he also felt that. That this gives him the opportunity, also the permission to do this kind of work. And he made a beautiful arrangement in the tradition that already Schoenberg did, because it's not new that these pieces were adapted for smaller ensembles. They did it because it was too expensive at the time, very, very simple, too expensive at the time to perform these pieces with bigger orchestras. But in fact, it is a sort of what you do is it's a sort of a concentrate of the music. You really go to the essence of the music, and that's what I really like in these performances. Also, the Schoenberg pieces are all really going to the essence, but the one of Reinbert de Leeuw is for me a very tactile, a very subtle version that he made, in a way totally different also what Schoenberg did. And when the people from Het Collectief were presenting us the idea, we still were in the idea that Reinbert would be conducting the piece as the one who wrote it and who made this adaptation. But sadly, this couldn't happen. So we were very, very keen in presenting it in honor also of Reinbert.
And like Mahler, Reinbert was a hugely controversial but also huge figure in Dutch music life, or for most of his life, and one of the tyros of 1960s music life in Amsterdam. Finally, I just wanted to have a word about another old and new combination, which is your Piazzolla program, recognizing the centenary of Piazzolla. And here we go to the bandolin and the extraordinary instrumentation that Piazzolla put together in Argentina 100 years ago, or not 100 years ago, but 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And it is an extraordinary, it's a very fascinating method of putting together music, which is so particularly Argentinian. And I wonder what you've done with it for this program.
Well, what the basic idea when we still had the idea of making a live festival was having a happy birthday Piazzolla, the centennial of remembrance of Piazzolla, and the idea was to have to look at different facets of different aspects of the music of Piazzolla, because Piazzolla is not only the tango composer. He done a lot of interesting work. He even made this opera that was very interesting also. And he also had a record that he made with jazz improvisers, which is hugely fascinating, this record. So when we were digging into this material, we found that there was a huge variety of presenting it to the people. But since we have decided to go very digital, then we had to really concentrate on 2 projects. And one of them is Sonico, and they are doing a combination of Piazzolla and someone who lived in his era, which is Roviro, which is also a composer, a tango composer, or a so-called tango composer. And they will mingle these 2 worlds together, but also make own interpretations of these works, because they have an essence also, or a background, not only in tango playing, but also in improvising, etc. And they bringing this work really into the era of today. And that is really interesting on what they do with this music, the guys from Sonico. And the second one is Gwen Crescens with his orchestra Tanguidia, where we focus there on Piazzolla more as a sort of more classical composer, where you have his 4 seasons, these 4 seasons that he wrote, 4 seasons of Buenos Aires, they're sometimes called. There's also other titles that are referring to, but he's really focusing on reproducing this and bringing the beauty of this pure music also again to our audiences, together with a number of recordings that were in the original recording of Piazzolla at the time. And there's some evergreens there. These are really amazing.
And therefore, your 4 seasons from Piazzolla link back to your Hendrix 4 seasons, and
yes.
It all goes full circle. Joost, that sounds a fascinating festival, and it all starts on the 13th of March. Thank you very much, and I hope that people will enjoy logging on, signing in, and having a listen.
Thank you so much, Simon and EFA. Thank you.